I'm Erin Spinagle. Today we're here at Spring Mills Middle. Join me today as we learn about some of the teachers here at the home of the Patriots on this edition of Be the Difference, West Virginia. We're here with Michele Adams. She is a science teacher here at Spring Mills Middle. Hi Michele, how are you?
Great, thanks.
Tell me about yourself.
Well, I have been teaching here in Berkeley County for 23 years. I started off in 7th grade. Science was my first full-time position, and I realized that I like science. I had an undergrad in elementary ed, but after having taught science for a year, I realized that science was really something that I enjoyed, so I went back and got my master's in secondary science. So right now I can teach elementary school, or I can teach middle school science.
So what led you to decide to become a teacher?
Well, I always liked school. I love school. My favorite year was 2nd grade, and I never really had a passion to be a teacher when I was in school. When I got to college, I had sort of a situation where I was offered, if I went into business, offered sort of an easy ride when I got out, and so I thought, well, I'll just go into business, and then when I graduate from college, I'll just, have this job. Well, after my first year, I realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do, and I changed to elementary ed my sophomore year because I kept recalling my 2nd grade year and how much I enjoyed school. So my ultimate goal at the end of my college career was to teach 2nd grade.
So you've had a lot of experiences outside the classroom that you've been able to bring back to your students to make science come alive. Tell me about some of the programs and places you've been to bring those experiences back to your classroom.
Well, probably the first program that I started in was Rock Camp, and it taught me about the rocks of West Virginia and the geology of West Virginia, and it really made me fall in love with rocks, so I started to bring that back to my students. After my first year of Rock Camp, we started to go into different rock camp sessions where we went out of state, and we ended up and down the East Coast. We ended up studying the rocks of New England. We ended up out west, and so that was really a life-changing experience for me, and I was able to bring a lot of knowledge back. After the rock camp stint, I sort of found other things. I went to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. I learned a lot about space. I learned a lot about NASA's plans to go into space. Then more recently, I ended up at the Idaho National Lab, and it's a nuclear reactor, the largest nuclear test reactor in the world. Got to see how nuclear energy is made and learned a lot about atoms and physics, which was new for me, and that's one of my favorite things to teach now. And probably the best and most amazing experience was I was able to go aboard a research vessel for 2.5 months. We left from Norway, and we ended up at the North Pole, and actually got off the ship on the ice, stood on the North Pole, and then spent those 2.5 months really collecting rocks off the ocean floor around the Arctic, and I was able to learn a lot about plate tectonics that way, and that's another one of my favorite things to teach. So the outside experiences that I've had have really impacted my teaching in the classroom.
So we hear a lot in the news about STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Why is it so important to include a focus on science in this era where everything is very test-driven and there's a lot of focus specifically on reading and math? Why also is it important to make sure that we include science as well?
Well, I think one of the neatest things about science is that it really helps kids learn to analyze. And one of the steps of the scientific method is analyzing data, but being able to understand what data means. And I think that if you can really push science and math, there's really a lot of analysis in there, and if you can learn to analyze things, then any subject becomes easier, especially reading. If you learn what it means to analyze information, then you can apply that to reading. And I think kids are getting less and less science, and so I think that we really need to push more and more to get it back into the classroom.
What's one misconception about teachers or education that you wish to clear for the public?
I would say that some people think teaching is an easy job. It's never easy. Every day is very challenging. I mean, you have good days and bad days, but it's never an easy job. You're always pulled in a lot of directions. You're caring for the kids, you're nurturing the kids, you're educating the kids, I like to make the analogy that it's like having 28 children in your living room all day, and you're seeing who needs to go to the bathroom, who needs to sharpen their pencil, who needs help with this, you know, who needs help with that. And so it's really a very busy day, and even though it is very challenging and it's never easy, it is certainly rewarding.
We're here in the library of Spring Mills Middle. This is Cindy Woods, the library media specialist. Hi, Cindy. How are you?
Hi, Erin. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you. Tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I am a Berkeley County native. I went to Jaredstown Elementary and Musselman High School and went on to Shepherd, and decided probably in high school that I wanted to be a librarian because I love working in my high school library. I got a major in English and a minor in library science, and took an English teaching job at the beginning because library jobs are kind of hard to come by. And I taught English at middle school for about 10 years until I was able to get my foot in the door with an elementary library job here in the county. I'm married and have a daughter and a granddaughter, and I have now been in the school system for about 38 years. I know, wow.
So you mentioned that you've been an English teacher and a library media specialist.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways that you have promoted literacy throughout the years within your classrooms and the community?
Well, when I was an English teacher, and that was back in the mid-70s, you didn't do read aloud much then with kids, but I did. And I read novels aloud to my students, you know, a chapter a day or whatever, and they loved it. When I run into former students now who are certainly grown adults, that's the only thing they remember about the class. They can tell me what books I read to them, what books they loved, that they heard read aloud. So that's one of the big things I started with. In my school community, I've had groups called Teachers as Readers over the years, where I'll meet with teachers who are interested after school, before school, once a month, and introduce new children's literature, adult professional literature, whatever. And we pick a book and read, I'll read. And so I've tried to promote things in that manner. This year, here at Spring Mills, I always post what I'm reading on the board with the kids, and I encourage all the other teachers in the building to do the same, because I think it's important that kids know that reading is a lifelong thing that we love to do. We don't just read because our teacher's making us, and so we try to promote literacy in that way too.
Tell me about some of the experience you've had, or the ways that you've been able to bring a global community or a global perspective back to the classroom.
Well, I have been very fortunate in my teaching career. I've had the opportunity to participate in programs that have taken me to other countries, and so I've been able to bring that information back to my students. When I worked in Frederick County, Virginia, I was selected as Teacher of the Year and got able to go to the Philippines with a group study exchange at the recommendation of my superintendent. So I spent about 5 weeks in the Philippines visiting the schools, visiting the homes, and when I came back, I was presenting all this to my students with slides and talks and in the community, and in sharing, they found out how much we have that we take for granted and how little they had. So my students started a book drive, and we sent that first year 11 boxes of books to the schools in the Philippines, and that grew over a 10-year period to where we were sending freighters of books. The Rotary Club sponsored this, and I think my students and community really made a difference during that time globally. Then here in Berkeley County, I applied to go to Japan as a Japan Fulbright teacher, and when I went to Japan and visited homes and schools and came back, the thing I focused on was Japanese storytelling, which is called kamishibai. So when I came back here, I started a kamishibai club with my students, taught them the art of Japanese storytelling, and then we went from school to school and did programs, and we did community programs. And I hope just that little bit, you know, of insight into another culture, you know, gets spread, and the students learn from that. And we did a Go Global program here at our school for 2 years, where we immersed the students in another culture for a full year, each of those years. So, You know, we try, but I just encourage them, if you can travel, travel. If you ever get the opportunity to go somewhere, go.
What's one thing that you wish the public knew about teachers or education?
I wish they knew how much the teachers really care. I mean, I watch the teachers in our building, and they care about our students so passionately. They care in ways like if there's a student who can't go on a field trip, they'll dip in their pockets and pay for it themselves personally so that kid can go. They care because the student who they know can't read is embarrassed in front of the class. They'll work with them after school and try to help them. I mean, they care so much, and I think maybe the public doesn't realize how far they go beyond their school day, not just in grading papers, not just in the things we take for granted that teachers are going to do outside of school, but all these extra little things and all the extra professional development they do. And they do it because they want to get better. They want to be better teachers, and they want to do it for their kids. And I think that's something the public just isn't aware of so much.
That's all for this edition of Be the Difference West Virginia. Join me next time as we learn more about the teachers here in Berkeley County. Until then, I'm Erin Spinagle, reminding you to be different, but more importantly, be the difference. I'll see you soon.